The information empire, communication networks, and propaganda. The master of messages. In the towering communications center atop Tenochtitlan's Templo Mayor, where trained runners awaited deployment orders, while scribes documented intelligence reports and coded symbols marked priority classifications, the most sophisticated information control system in pre-Columbian America coordinated its operations under the direction of Itzaltlatoani, whose family had served as imperial information ministers for 6 generations. For this master of strategic communication understood that authentic political power required not merely the ability to move armies and collect tribute, but systematic control over information flows that could shape perceptions, influence decisions, and coordinate complex administrative activities across territories spanning thousands of miles, while ensuring that imperial messaging reached every corner of the empire with precise accuracy and optimal timing. The imperial messaging hierarchy that structured information flow throughout the empire included carefully established protocols and priority systems that ensured critical communications received immediate attention, while routine administrative messages were processed according to standardized schedules and procedural requirements that balanced efficiency with security considerations, demonstrating that effective imperial administration required sophisticated information management capabilities that could handle enormous volumes of diverse communications while maintaining accuracy, confidentiality, and strategic coordination across vast geographical distances. The runner relay networks that enabled rapid communication across the empire included systematically positioned stations and personnel rotation schedules that provided fresh messengers at optimal intervals, while their training programs and physical conditioning requirements ensured that imperial messages could travel from Tenochtitlan to distant provinces in minimum time despite challenging geographical obstacles and weather conditions that might otherwise have prevented effective long-distance communication and administrative coordination. The coded messaging systems that protected sensitive information and prevented unauthorized access included sophisticated encryption techniques and authentication procedures that ensured secure communication despite potential interception by hostile forces, while their coding protocols and decryption procedures enabled authorized personnel to access confidential information while preventing compromise of strategic plans, military operations, and diplomatic negotiations that required absolute secrecy for successful implementation. The propaganda distribution networks that shaped public opinion and reinforced imperial authority included systematic messaging campaigns and cultural programming that promoted imperial values while discouraging rebellion and resistance through carefully crafted narratives that portrayed imperial rule as beneficial, legitimate, and divinely sanctioned rather than oppressive or exploitative, demonstrating understanding of psychology and public opinion management that exceeded contemporary political systems. The intelligence gathering operations that provided information essential for strategic planning and political decision-making included systematic surveillance networks and information analysis procedures that revealed enemy capabilities, internal dissent, and strategic opportunities, while their reporting systems and analytical frameworks enabled imperial administrators to make informed decisions regarding military campaigns, diplomatic initiatives, and administrative policies based on accurate intelligence rather than speculation or assumption. The cultural messaging programs that promoted imperial ideology and social integration included educational initiatives and ceremonial programming that transmitted imperial values while encouraging adoption of imperial customs and loyalty to imperial authority through systematic exposure to imperial cultural content and participation in imperial cultural activities that created emotional connections and psychological identification with imperial success and prosperity. The regional communication coordination that ensured consistent messaging across diverse territories included standardized procedures and oversight mechanisms that maintained coherent imperial narrative despite linguistic diversity and cultural differences, while their adaptation techniques and local customization procedures enabled effective communication with diverse populations through culturally appropriate methods and linguistically accessible formats. The information security protocols that protected imperial communications from enemy interference and unauthorized disclosure included systematic security measures and counterintelligence operations that prevented compromise of sensitive information while their monitoring systems and breach detection procedures enabled rapid identification and response to security threats that might otherwise have compromised imperial strategic advantages and administrative effectiveness. The administrative communication systems that coordinated complex governmental functions and policy implementation included documentation procedures and information management protocols that enabled effective coordination between different administrative departments, while their record-keeping systems and information retrieval procedures provided institutional memory and analytical capabilities that supported continuous governmental improvement and policy development. The diplomatic messaging services that facilitated international relations and treaty negotiations included specialized communication procedures and protocol requirements that ensured appropriate diplomatic correspondence, while their translation services and cultural adaptation procedures enabled effective communication with foreign powers despite linguistic barriers and cultural differences that might otherwise have prevented successful diplomatic relationships and international cooperation. The emergency communication procedures that enabled rapid response to crises and unexpected developments included priority messaging systems and rapid deployment protocols that ensured critical information reached appropriate authorities in minimum time, while their crisis communication plans and emergency coordination procedures enabled effective imperial response to natural disasters, military threats, and internal emergencies that required immediate attention and coordinated action. Imperial runner networks. The systematic training programs that prepared messengers for professional imperial service included physical conditioning regimens and mental preparation techniques that enhanced speed, endurance, and reliability, while their selection criteria and performance standards ensured that only qualified personnel served in imperial communication roles, requiring exceptional physical capabilities and absolute trustworthiness for handling sensitive information and maintaining communication security under challenging conditions. The relay station infrastructure that supported long-distance communication included strategically positioned facilities and supply management systems that provided rest, provisions, and equipment maintenance for imperial messengers, while their station coordination and scheduling procedures ensured optimal timing and resource allocation for maintaining consistent communication speeds and reliability despite geographical obstacles and weather conditions that might otherwise have disrupted message transmission. The route optimization procedures that maximized communication efficiency and minimized transmission time included systematic geographical analysis and pathway development that utilized optimal terrain and distance calculations, while their route security assessments and hazard management procedures ensured safe passage for imperial messengers through potentially dangerous territories and challenging environmental conditions that required careful planning and risk management. The message prioritization systems that ensured critical communications received immediate attention included classification procedures and priority scheduling that enabled rapid transmission of urgent information, while their handling protocols and security measures maintained appropriate confidentiality levels for different categories of imperial communications, requiring varying levels of security and speed for optimal administrative effectiveness and strategic coordination. The performance monitoring programs that maintained optimal communication system effectiveness included quality assessment procedures and personnel evaluation systems that ensured consistent service standards, while their improvement initiatives and training updates enhanced system capabilities and addressed operational challenges that might otherwise have reduced communication efficiency and reliability across the vast imperial communication network. The backup communication procedures that ensured continued information flow despite system disruptions included alternative routing systems and emergency protocols that maintained essential communications during crisis periods, while their redundancy planning and contingency procedures prevented communication failures that might otherwise have compromised imperial coordination and administrative effectiveness during critical situations, requiring immediate information transmission. The equipment standardization programs that maintained consistent communication capabilities included standard messenger equipment and supply management systems that ensured optimal performance, while their quality control procedures and maintenance schedules preserved equipment functionality and reliability despite heavy usage and challenging environmental conditions that required robust equipment and systematic maintenance for optimal communication system performance. The security escort services that protected important communications and high-value messengers included armed guard, assignments, and route security procedures that prevented message interception, while their protection protocols and threat assessment procedures ensured safe delivery of critical information despite hostile activities and security threats that might otherwise have compromised sensitive communications and Imperial strategic advantages. The multi-language communication support that accommodated linguistic diversity across Imperial territories included translation services and interpreter networks that enabled effective communication despite language barriers, while their linguistic training programs and cultural competency development enhanced communication effectiveness across diverse populations, requiring specialized approaches and culturally appropriate messaging techniques for optimal information transmission and understanding. The record-keeping systems that documented communication activities and message transmission included systematic documentation procedures and archive management that provided institutional memory, while their tracking systems and performance analysis enabled continuous improvement of communication effectiveness and identification of system strengths and weaknesses, requiring attention for optimal Imperial communication network performance and administrative coordination. The communication technology innovations that enhanced system capabilities and efficiency included technical improvements and equipment development that increased communication speed, while their innovation programs and technology assessment procedures enabled adoption of beneficial improvements that enhanced Imperial communication advantages and administrative effectiveness through systematic technological advancement and capability enhancement. The coordination protocols that integrated messenger services with other Imperial systems included interface procedures and information sharing agreements that enabled effective cooperation, while their coordination mechanisms and collaborative procedures enhanced overall Imperial effectiveness through systematic integration of communication capabilities with military, administrative, and economic systems, requiring coordinated information flow and strategic coordination. Propaganda technologies. The narrative development systems that created compelling stories and messages for public consumption included sophisticated storytelling techniques and psychological persuasion methods that influenced public opinion, while their narrative frameworks and messaging strategies promoted Imperial legitimacy and authority through emotionally engaging content that resonated with diverse audiences and cultural backgrounds, requiring tailored approaches for maximum persuasive effectiveness and public acceptance. The visual communication programs that utilized artistic expression and symbolic representation for propaganda purposes included ceremonial displays and architectural messaging that reinforced Imperial authority, while their visual design principles and symbolic systems created memorable images and associations that strengthened public identification with Imperial success and prosperity through systematic visual programming and artistic propaganda, serving both aesthetic and political objectives. The ceremonial propaganda coordination that utilized public events and religious observances for political messaging included festival programming and ceremonial scripting that promoted Imperial values, while their event management and audience engagement techniques created positive emotional associations with Imperial authority through systematic ceremonial programming and public celebrations serving both religious and political functions. The educational propaganda implementation that influenced long-term public attitudes and values included curriculum development and instructional programming that transmitted Imperial ideology, while their educational content and teaching methodologies created systematic indoctrination that shaped future generations' attitudes toward Imperial authority and social organization through comprehensive educational influence and ideological transmission, serving both educational and political objectives. The cultural infiltration strategies that influenced traditional practices and local customs included systematic cultural modification and tradition adaptation that incorporated imperial themes, while their cultural programming and custom modification techniques gradually transformed local cultural expressions to support rather than challenge imperial authority through subtle cultural influence and tradition adaptation, serving both cultural preservation and political control. The economic propaganda systems that portrayed imperial rule as beneficial for prosperity and welfare included messaging campaigns and economic demonstration that highlighted imperial benefits, while their prosperity messaging and economic success stories created positive associations with imperial authority through systematic economic propaganda and prosperity demonstration, serving both economic development and political legitimacy objectives. The religious propaganda integration that utilized spiritual authority and divine sanction for political messaging included theological development and religious ceremony that portrayed imperial authority as divinely ordained, while their religious messaging and spiritual programming created moral obligations and divine authorization for imperial obedience through systematic religious propaganda and spiritual authority, serving both religious and political functions. The counter-propaganda operations that neutralized hostile messaging and enemy influence included monitoring systems and response procedures that identified and countered anti-imperial messaging, while their information warfare techniques and psychological counter-operations prevented enemy propaganda from undermining public loyalty and imperial authority through systematic counter-propaganda and information defense, serving both security and political stability objectives. The regional propaganda adaptation that customized messaging for different territories and cultural groups included localization procedures and cultural modification that enhanced propaganda effectiveness, while their adaptation techniques and cultural sensitivity approaches enabled effective propaganda despite linguistic diversity and cultural differences, requiring specialized messaging and culturally appropriate propaganda for optimal persuasive impact and political influence. The propaganda effectiveness assessment that measured public response and messaging impact included monitoring procedures and feedback analysis that evaluated propaganda success, while their assessment techniques and improvement procedures enabled continuous enhancement of propaganda effectiveness through systematic evaluation and messaging optimization, serving both analytical understanding and propaganda improvement objectives. The long-term propaganda planning that sustained consistent messaging and ideological reinforcement included strategic planning and messaging coordination that maintained propaganda coherence, while their long-term strategies and sustained messaging approaches created cumulative propaganda effects that strengthened imperial authority through persistent ideological reinforcement and sustained political messaging, serving both immediate and long-term political objectives. The propaganda innovation development that enhanced messaging techniques and persuasive capabilities included experimental approaches and technique refinements that improved propaganda effectiveness, while their innovation processes and technique development enhanced imperial propaganda advantages through systematic advancement and capability enhancement, serving both technological improvement and political influence objectives. Intelligence and surveillance. The systematic espionage operations that gathered information essential for strategic planning and threat assessment included trained agent networks and intelligence collection procedures that provided accurate information, while their operational security and agent protection measures ensured continued intelligence gathering capabilities despite enemy counterintelligence efforts and security threats that might otherwise have compromised imperial intelligence advantages and strategic planning capabilities. The merchant spy networks that utilized commercial activities as cover for intelligence gathering included trader recruitment and commercial intelligence that provided strategic information, while their cover operations and commercial integration enabled systematic intelligence collection through legitimate business activities that avoided suspicion while gathering essential information regarding enemy capabilities, economic conditions, and strategic opportunities. The diplomatic intelligence operations that gathered information through official and unofficial diplomatic channels included embassy activities and diplomatic reporting that provided political intelligence, while their diplomatic cover and official relationship leveraging enabled intelligence collection through legitimate diplomatic activities that enhanced understanding of foreign political developments and strategic intentions, requiring careful diplomatic intelligence coordination and official relationship management. The internal surveillance systems that monitored domestic activities and identified potential threats included citizen monitoring and loyalty assessment procedures that maintained internal security, while their surveillance networks and reporting systems enabled identification of internal dissent and rebellion planning that might otherwise have threatened imperial stability and political control, requiring systematic domestic intelligence and internal security coordination. The enemy infiltration operations that gathered information from hostile territories and unfriendly powers included deep cover agents and long-term penetration that provided strategic intelligence, while their infiltration techniques and agent management enabled systematic intelligence collection from enemy territories, despite security measures and counterintelligence efforts that might otherwise have prevented access to critical strategic information. The communication interception programs that monitored enemy communications and intercepted sensitive information included signal monitoring and message interception that revealed enemy plans, while their interception techniques and communication analysis enabled understanding of enemy strategic thinking and operational planning through systematic communication monitoring and message analysis, serving both defensive and offensive intelligence objectives. The informant network development that recruited local sources and cultivated information providers included source recruitment and informant management that expanded intelligence coverage, while their source protection and information validation procedures ensured reliable intelligence while protecting valuable sources from enemy detection and retaliation that might otherwise have compromised intelligence networks and source safety. The counterintelligence operations that protected imperial information and prevented enemy intelligence gathering included security measures and enemy agent detection that maintained imperial security, while their counterintelligence techniques and security protocols prevented enemy infiltration and information theft that might otherwise have compromised imperial strategic advantages and operational security. The intelligence analysis procedures that transformed raw information into actionable intelligence included analytical frameworks and assessment techniques that provided strategic understanding, while their analysis methods and reporting procedures enabled effective utilization of intelligence information for strategic planning and policy development through systematic intelligence processing and analytical assessment serving. Analytical assessment serving, policy development through systematic intelligence processing and analytical assessment serving, both tactical and strategic intelligence requirements. The intelligence coordination systems that integrated diverse information sources and analysis capabilities included information sharing and analytical coordination that enhanced intelligence effectiveness, while their coordination procedures and integration techniques enabled comprehensive understanding through systematic intelligence synthesis and coordinated analytical efforts serving both specialized and comprehensive intelligence requirements. The technological intelligence operations that assessed enemy capabilities and technological developments included technical assessment and innovation monitoring that provided technological intelligence, while their technical intelligence techniques and capability assessment enabled understanding of enemy technological advantages and development programs through systematic technical intelligence and innovation monitoring serving both defensive and developmental intelligence objectives. The predictive analysis capabilities that anticipated future developments and strategic opportunities included forecasting techniques and trend analysis that provided strategic guidance, while their prediction methods and scenario planning enabled proactive strategic planning and policy development through systematic predictive intelligence and strategic forecasting serving both immediate and long-term strategic planning requirements. Strategic information warfare. The disinformation campaigns that confused enemies and misled hostile forces included false information distribution and deceptive messaging that provided strategic advantages, while their disinformation techniques and deception operations enabled manipulation of enemy decision-making through systematic false information and misleading intelligence serving both defensive and offensive strategic objectives through psychological manipulation and strategic deception. The information timing strategies that optimized message release and intelligence coordination included strategic timing and information coordination that maximized political impact, while their timing techniques and coordination procedures enabled optimal utilization of information advantages through systematic timing coordination and strategic information management, serving both tactical and strategic communication objectives requiring precise coordination and optimal impact timing. The psychological warfare operations that influenced enemy morale and decision-making included psychological manipulation and morale undermining that weakened enemy effectiveness, while their psychological techniques and mental warfare approaches enabled strategic influence through systematic psychological operations and mental manipulation, serving both military and political objectives through psychological pressure and mental influence operations. The information blackout procedures that denied enemies access to critical information included communication restriction and information control that prevented enemy intelligence gathering, while their information security and communication denial techniques enabled protection of strategic advantages through systematic information control and intelligence security, serving both operational security and strategic advantage protection objectives. The strategic leak management that utilized controlled information release for political purposes included selective disclosure and strategic revelation that influenced political developments, while their leak techniques and strategic disclosure procedures enabled political manipulation through controlled information release, serving both political influence and strategic positioning objectives requiring careful information management and political timing coordination. The rumor and misinformation coordination that shaped public opinion and enemy perception included systematic rumor distribution and public opinion manipulation that influenced political attitudes, while their rumor techniques and perception management approaches enabled strategic influence through systematic social manipulation and opinion formation, serving both domestic control and enemy influence objectives through social and psychological manipulation. The information alliance coordination that collaborated with friendly powers for mutual intelligence benefits included intelligence sharing and collaborative information operations that enhanced mutual capabilities, while their alliance procedures and cooperative intelligence techniques enabled strategic cooperation through systematic information collaboration, serving both mutual benefit and enhanced capability objectives requiring careful alliance coordination and information sharing protocols. The information siege tactics that isolated enemies from communications and intelligence included communication disruption and information isolation that weakened enemy capabilities, while their siege techniques and communication warfare approaches enabled strategic disadvantaging through systematic communication disruption, serving both military and political objectives through information warfare and communication control operations. The narrative warfare strategies that competed for ideological influence and cultural dominance included story competition and cultural messaging that promoted imperial values, while their narrative techniques and cultural influence approaches enabled ideological victory through systematic cultural warfare, serving both cultural dominance and political influence objectives through comprehensive narrative competition and cultural programming. The information timing weapons that utilized temporal advantages and coordination benefits included synchronized messaging and coordinated revelation that maximized strategic impact, while their timing weapons and coordination techniques enabled strategic surprise through systematic temporal coordination, serving both tactical surprise and strategic advantage objectives requiring precise timing and coordinated execution. The intelligence feedback loops that utilized enemy responses for strategic adjustment included response monitoring and adaptive techniques that enhanced strategic effectiveness, while their feedback systems and adaptive procedures enabled continuous improvement through systematic response analysis, serving both strategic learning and tactical adaptation objectives requiring continuous monitoring and systematic adjustment. The information victory conditions that established objectives for information warfare success included victory metrics and success measurement that defined information warfare objectives, while their success criteria and victory assessment techniques enabled strategic evaluation through systematic outcome measurement, serving both strategic assessment and tactical adjustment objectives requiring clear objectives and measurable outcomes. Cultural messaging programs, the imperial identity promotion that strengthened identification with imperial culture and values, included identity development and cultural programming that enhanced imperial loyalty, while their identity techniques and cultural messaging approaches created emotional connection through systematic cultural identification, serving both cultural unity and political loyalty objectives, requiring comprehensive cultural programming and identity development initiatives. The traditional culture modification that adapted local customs to support imperial objectives included custom adaptation and tradition modification that preserved beneficial elements, while their modification techniques and tradition adaptation approaches enabled cultural integration through systematic cultural adaptation, serving both cultural preservation and political integration objectives, requiring careful cultural modification and tradition adaptation. The religious messaging integration that coordinated spiritual authority with political objectives included theological coordination and religious programming that supported imperial authority, while their religious techniques and spiritual messaging approaches enabled divine authorization through systematic religious integration, serving both spiritual authority and political legitimacy objectives, requiring careful religious coordination and theological programming. The educational cultural programming that transmitted imperial values through systematic instruction included curriculum development and instructional programming that promoted imperial ideology, while their educational techniques and cultural instruction approaches enabled systematic cultural transmission through comprehensive educational programming, serving both cultural education and ideological transmission objectives, requiring systematic educational development and cultural instruction. The artistic cultural expression that promoted imperial themes through creative works included artistic programming and creative direction that enhanced imperial culture, while their artistic techniques and cultural expression approaches enabled cultural influence through systematic artistic programming, serving both cultural development and political influence objectives, requiring comprehensive artistic coordination and cultural creative direction. The social ceremony coordination that reinforced imperial values through public activities included ceremonial programming and social event management that promoted imperial culture, while their ceremonial techniques and social programming approaches enabled cultural reinforcement through systematic social coordination, serving both cultural unity and political reinforcement objectives, requiring comprehensive ceremonial programming and social event coordination. The language standardization programs that promoted imperial communication and cultural unity included linguistic coordination and communication standardization that enhanced imperial integration, while their language techniques and communication approaches enabled cultural unity through systematic linguistic coordination, serving both communication effectiveness and cultural integration objectives, requiring comprehensive language programming and communication standardization. The cultural exchange facilitation that promoted beneficial cultural interaction and imperial influence included exchange programming and cultural interaction that enhanced imperial culture, while their exchange techniques and cultural facilitation approaches enabled cultural enhancement through systematic cultural exchange, serving both cultural development and political influence objectives, requiring careful cultural exchange coordination and interaction facilitation. The generational cultural transmission that ensured long-term cultural influence and imperial loyalty included youth programming and generational education that transmitted imperial values, while their transmission techniques and generational approaches enabled sustained cultural influence through systematic generational programming, serving both cultural continuity and political stability objectives, requiring comprehensive generational coordination and cultural transmission. The cultural resistance neutralization that addressed opposition to imperial culture and values included resistance identification and opposition management that prevented cultural conflict, while their neutralization techniques and resistance management approaches enabled cultural integration through systematic resistance neutralization, serving both cultural unity and political stability objectives, requiring careful resistance management and cultural conflict resolution. The regional cultural coordination that adapted imperial culture for diverse territories and populations included cultural adaptation and regional programming that enhanced cultural effectiveness, while their adaptation techniques and regional approaches enabled cultural integration through systematic regional coordination, serving both cultural effectiveness and territorial integration objectives, requiring comprehensive regional cultural programming and adaptation coordination, the cultural impact assessment that measured cultural programming effectiveness and public response included evaluation procedures and impact measurement that assessed cultural success, while their assessment techniques and evaluation approaches enabled cultural improvement through systematic cultural assessment, serving both cultural effectiveness and program improvement objectives, requiring comprehensive cultural evaluation and impact measurement. The information legacy. The comprehensive information control that unified all aspects of imperial communication and propaganda into systematic political technology included coordinated information management and strategic communication that achieved imperial objectives while demonstrating that authentic political power required not merely military force but systematic information control that could shape perception, influence behavior, and coordinate complex activities across vast territories, serving both administrative efficiency and political control. The communication infrastructure development that created enduring foundations for information management and strategic coordination included technological advancement and institutional development that enhanced imperial capabilities while demonstrating that effective governance required systematic communication infrastructure that could support complex administrative activities and strategic coordination across diverse geographical and cultural contexts, serving both immediate operational needs and long-term institutional development. The propaganda methodology establishment that created systematic approaches to public influence and opinion management included technique, development, and methodological innovation that enhanced political influence while demonstrating that political control required sophisticated understanding of psychology and social dynamics that could influence public opinion and behavior through systematic messaging and cultural programming, serving both political control and social stability. The intelligence institutionalization that created permanent capabilities for information gathering and strategic analysis included organizational development and institutional establishment that enhanced imperial security while demonstrating that strategic planning required systematic intelligence, capabilities that could provide accurate information and analytical assessment for decision-making and policy development, serving both strategic planning and operational security. The cultural programming legacy that established enduring frameworks for ideological influence and social integration included cultural development and ideological establishment that enhanced imperial unity while demonstrating that political stability required systematic cultural programming that could transmit values and promote loyalty through comprehensive cultural activities and educational programming serving both cultural development and political integration. The information security innovations that protected imperial communications and prevented enemy intelligence gathering included security advancement and protection development that enhanced imperial advantages while demonstrating that strategic superiority required systematic information security that could protect critical information and prevent enemy intelligence gathering, serving both operational security and strategic advantage preservation. The administrative communication optimization that enhanced governmental efficiency and policy coordination included procedural improvement and coordination enhancement that improved imperial administration while demonstrating that effective governance required systematic communication that could coordinate complex activities and ensure policy implementation across diverse administrative contexts, serving both governmental efficiency and policy effectiveness. The diplomatic communication advancement that enhanced international relations and treaty effectiveness included diplomatic improvement and relationship enhancement that strengthened imperial position while demonstrating that international success required systematic diplomatic communication that could support effective negotiation and relationship management, serving both diplomatic success and international influence. The technological communication development that advanced technical capabilities and operational effectiveness included technological improvement and capability enhancement that increased imperial advantages while demonstrating that strategic superiority required technological advancement that could enhance communication speed, security, and reliability, serving both operational effectiveness and strategic advantage maintenance. The emergency communication preparedness that established crisis response capabilities and disaster coordination included emergency preparation and crisis coordination that enhanced imperial resilience, while demonstrating that governmental stability required systematic emergency communication that could coordinate rapid response and maintain governmental continuity during crisis periods, serving both crisis management and governmental stability. The information warfare capabilities that established strategic influence and enemy neutralization included warfare development and influence advancement that enhanced imperial strategic position while demonstrating that strategic competition required systematic information warfare capabilities that could influence enemy decision-making and protect imperial information advantages, serving both strategic competition and imperial security. The institutional communication preservation that maintained imperial communication knowledge and capabilities for future generations included knowledge preservation and institutional continuity that ensured ongoing imperial advantages while demonstrating that institutional success required systematic knowledge preservation that could maintain institutional memory and capabilities despite leadership changes and political transitions, serving both institutional continuity and capability preservation. Through the patient development of comprehensive communication networks and systematic information control capabilities that connected every corner of the empire through coordinated messaging and strategic intelligence, the information empire demonstrated that authentic political authority required not merely physical force but intellectual influence that could shape minds, coordinate activities, and maintain social order through systematic communication and strategic messaging rather than coercive force alone. The masters of imperial communication thus revealed for future generations that information represented the fundamental currency of political power, while demonstrating that systematic communication capabilities could achieve political objectives that military force alone could never accomplish. Through sophisticated understanding of psychology, culture, and human motivation that enabled peaceful governance and voluntary cooperation rather than resistance and rebellion. In the end, the information empire that connected diverse territories through coordinated communication and strategic messaging proved that authentic imperial greatness required not merely the ability to conquer territories, but the wisdom to transform conquered populations into willing participants through information, education, and cultural programming that served both imperial objectives and community welfare through systematic communication and strategic influence rather than oppressive control.